I'd say the biggest thing that will help people if they want to get into this industry, especially when you're fresh out of uni and you don't have too much experience under your belt, is having initiative. You'd be surprised, not EY, but any company, sometimes when people are fresh out of uni, they just kind of don't have that initiative to proactively seek tasks.
And I guess now we'll move on to talking about the role you guys specifically have at UI as cybersecurity consultants. So I guess a lot of students are quite unsure as to how your typical days go, as we're not like around these sort of professions as we are like studying. So if you guys could talk about how like a typical day would look, or even if you want to go through how a typical project will run, that would be great.
Yeah, sure. I'll talk a little bit about my area of cyber, which is advanced cybersec. Like I mentioned before, it's split into two areas. There's blue team and red team. And red team is like the movie-esque cybersecurity stuff that you see, like penetration testing, social engineering, all of that. And then there's my team, which is blue team. And what we do is like we're on the defending side. So we look at the data and we look for people who are trying to hack enterprises, and to do that we look through logs and we look for anomalous behaviors with like programs such as Splunk or Sentinel. And there's like my day-to-day would be, right now it's within like 3 categories, right? And one of them is threat intelligence, which is you can get these feeds online from paid feeds or open source feeds, which show you intelligence of current like malwares, for example, or phishing campaigns that are going on, attacking certain industries. So an example is like a company called Alien Vault. They have an open source feed that anyone can use, and it shows you that this kind of malware is going out, attacking these kind of industries. And we can see that feed and we can be like, oh, this might happen with one of our clients, and we can monitor the logs to see if that is happening, and we can prevent it before it happens. So that's one area, and that area is called threat intelligence. And directly linked to that area is threat actors, which is like who are the hackers that are like trying to attack the enterprise. And we can build up profiles being like, oh, this attacker uses these techniques, and this is like their way of attacking an enterprise. We can model around that and build detection, leading to the next area, which is called threat detection. And that's where we build out like code or rules on these platforms like Sentinel or Splunk. And we build out rules being like, oh, if this technique is detected, do this, and it plays out a rule. So my everyday is it's quite different really. It depends on the day, but I would be in one of those 3 categories, looking into one of these threat intelligence areas.
Yeah, I guess to go on what Harry said, probably to provide, I mean, Harry's gone into the sort of technical details of what he does. In terms of what I do, I'm sort of more on the risk kind of side of it. So a lot of my engagements are either conducting like risk assessments. They could be, for regulatory compliance as well, whether it's something like APRA or, the Australian Security Centre as well, their requirements that they have. And then also there's a lot of related to specific clients, potentially risk elements that they have. So whether they have like an information security policy and different standards that they need to adhere to, and how can they align their technologies that they have to those particular standards. So mine's more of a risk sort of focused lens. But I guess to provide the context to people about how sort of EY works in terms of, what you are doing, because it is very different as, week to week sort of thing. So essentially there's sort of 2 types of main activities that you'll be doing. The first one is sort of business development work. So this is normally activities that are done to be able to win other work. So the way EY works is we have engagements, and engagements are obviously with a client, and that client has a specific problem or a need that they need addressed. So they sometimes will reach out to us saying that we have this particular problem, can you help us? Or it will be the other way around, where the client kind of, we might leverage an existing connection that we already have, or we've already been at a client for a particular time, and we realize that there actually might be some work in this particular area. So the business development work will normally consist of making proposals, or drafting statements of work and so forth. So the proposal will kind of say, this is our proposed solution to be able to meet that problem that you have identified. These are sort of the way we would go about it. These are the resources that we can provide. This is the credentials that EY has had. So maybe similar clients that we've done the work for, whether that's in Australia or it could be overseas as well. And then there's also, a costing element and so forth to it. So what tends to happen is, people will assist in that business development work to create those proposals. They can be PowerPoint packs, it could be documents, depends on the client. And then once we sort of win that work, that's when we have these engagements to go on. And that's what we sort of call as chargeable work. So depending on what rank you're at, will depend on how much of your time is chargeable. So normally, if you're a consultant or a senior consultant, you spend most of your time doing that chargeable work. And as you progress up through the ranks, you'll spend more time doing that business development and management work rather than sort of actual delivery. But on that engagement model, it depends on how long the engagement is. So some engagements could be, only a couple of weeks. Some engagements could be for a whole year or a few months. So essentially, you'll be assigned to a particular project. And those engagements vary from, you could be on one engagement, like Harry's on in terms of like a threat intelligence one, and then the next engagement he's on something like a risk assessment or something. So it just depends where the work is and where they need to assign people. So to say like what an average day looks like, I guess it kind of, depends on what you're sort of doing at a particular time. But there's normally, lots of meetings, lots of emails, speaking to stakeholders. And that's the great thing about consulting, is you get exposure to a lot of different stakeholders, and they're usually quite sort of senior stakeholders as well at the clients. But you're not sort of stuck in that one task, for the same day each day. You could be at a client for a couple of months, and then the next month you're at a totally different client with a totally new set of people, which is really great. So you do get that diversity, which is fantastic.
What would you say is the top skill that you use in your daily roles? And do you have any tips about, any tips for students to develop these skills?
It's a good question. I'm going to answer it in two ways. I'm going to say what's probably the number one skill that I use, but also I think the number one skill that people should have if they want to apply for a role like this. Obviously, communication is quite big. Not only just sort of, verbal communication in, say, conducting a meeting or anything like that, but just being able to articulate yourself in writing an email or something, especially when you're dealing with key stakeholders and quite senior stakeholders. You don't want to send a very long-winded email asking them what they need to do. You kind of want to get straight to the point, but also provide enough information that they actually understand what you're saying. So practicing your verbal and written communication, I think, is a skill that can allow you to thrive really well in the role. So that's definitely something that people can work on. But I'd say the biggest thing that will help people if they want to get into this industry, especially when you're fresh out of uni and you don't have too much experience under your belt, is having initiative. You'd be surprised, not EY, but any company, sometimes when people are fresh out of uni, they just kind of don't have that initiative to proactively seek tasks. So having that skill that, if you don't maybe have too much work to do, and actively going out to seek opportunities, whether it's asking people for work or trying to find work to do, I think that's a really good skill to develop and learn. But also not just that as well, but if someone gives you a task, think about, well, how can I take this task to the next level? Instead of just kind of doing it and just sending it back, what else can I do to add value to this? So it's whether maybe putting your hand up for other opportunities, doing different elements as well. And I mean, that's the great thing about EY, is that there are so many things you can get involved in. So you could show initiative in terms of, you know, taking L&D opportunity. It could show initiative in terms of like a volunteering opportunity as well, through like something like EY Ripples, which is our social and corporate responsibility program that we have. So I think, yeah, if you can develop and show initiative, which is sometimes harder for people if you're kind of more on the shy sort of side as well, but it's something that people can work towards. I think that will help them go a long way in the industry.
Definitely, Justin. Just to add to that, I had very similar to what Justin said, communication is absolutely key. And I think when we come in as grads, sometimes we're scared that we won't be able to perform or know what to do in a certain situation. So I think being able to learn on your feet is also a very important skill. So like we have so much support, like our managers will provide us with all the relevant learning knowledge required to do all the tasks that we're given. So being able to concisely like read and comprehend, and then be able to communicate that back. Like Justin was talking about proposals before, maybe you might not know much about the topic, but they'll provide you with as much reading material as they can, and being able to articulate that and then present it back is a really fundamental skill to have. And you were mentioning the learning and development L&D stuff. Yeah, that is a huge thing that EY promotes. They'll, for example, if you're in cyber and you want to learn cloud computing, they'll fund your cloud certificates and the exam fees. We also have like our EY badges, which is, say if you want to learn about blockchain, they have a course about it. And whatever other learning opportunities, like your CA, if you want to do one, they'll also, you can talk to your counselor about it and they'll look into it.
Yeah, moving on to more of sort of the personal side, how do you guys sort of manage your work life to your personal life? Are there any like tips of like managing the stress, or like any things that you guys do to sort of like clock out of your corporate life?
Yeah, sure. I reckon breaking up the day with breaks, especially like during COVID, where we're all like sitting on our seats all day. I know it's like standing up, going for a walk every like 2 hours or so. It really breaks up the monotony of the day, as well as like having a balanced diet, getting to sleep on time. I notice like some days like I'll be stuck watching crypto YouTube videos all day, all night, and then I'll wake up not late, but yeah. So I think finding that right balance is really crucial. So to help with that, I think you saw me drinking a lot of water during the podcast. I think that helps a lot, as well as yeah, going on those walks. What about you, Justin?
Yeah, I definitely echo what you're saying, and especially, yeah, it's probably, you know, more important, you know, in COVID times as well, that especially working from home, it can get quite easy. You know, it hits 5 o'clock sort of quite easily if you know got a busy day, and it's easy to work, you know, longer than that if it's there. But definitely, yeah, about having kind of that routine that you're in, and that routine sort of supporting, you know, your well-being as well. So as an example, you know, 12 to 1 each day, I'll always block my calendar out, just a, you know, reoccurring thing. And I'll always spend, weather permitting, half of that having lunch, and then half of that going for a, you know, quick half an hour walk. And that just kind of, you know, breaks up the day. Then you've sort of done a little bit of exercise as well, which is really good. And it definitely sort of helps the mind as well for the afternoon meetings. It is a very fast-paced environment, consulting, and there's usually, you know, quite tight deadlines sometimes depending on the engagement you're on. So it is quite easy to feel stressed and overwhelmed at points. But I think ultimately the individual knows themselves the best. So they know what can kind of, you know, get them out of it. and how they can sort of work through that. So I think having that understanding about yourself, whether it's you might have like a comfort food or a comfort activity or something that, you know, if you have a long day, you can do that or have that food and kind of, you know, boost your spirits back up. But I'd also say that it is a very supportive workplace as well. So everyone is a very approachable, whether it's your colleague, like, you know, if I go to Harry or something for an issue that I'm having, or, you know, a manager, and doesn't matter kind of what senior level they're at, whether they're a manager, a senior manager, or a partner, everyone understands that, you know, well-being and looking after yourself. And there are a lot of, you know, employee programs available that you can utilize if you know, were feeling quite stressed and you don't see a way out of it and you need a bit of professional assistance for that. But I'd just say in terms of, you know, uni, you kind of have that understanding about time management anyway. You have, you know, your classes and or your practicals or seminars that you need to go to. You have your deadlines that you need to meet for your assignments. So you're kind of already in that mindset, which is really good. So it's just about applying that to a you know, professional sort of workplace. But ultimately, you know, well-being comes first. So you know, definitely looking after yourself is the best way to go about it, and that will show in your work. Then, if you're in a healthy mindset, you're eating well, you know, you're sleeping well, your work is and your quality of work is probably going to be improved. And that's going to help you thrive in the role as well. So
yeah, precisely. I love like the focus on like focusing on yourself outside of work, which in turn like it feeds itself back into the actual like quality of your tasks, which is like quite a thing that people tend to forget. So hopefully they listen to this podcast and take your advice on board. But yeah, just to conclude, thank you guys so much for giving us your time to meet with us and discuss your roles and your journey to EY. We sure learned heaps, and I'm sure our members listen to this will learn a lot as well. So yeah, thank you so much, guys.